Coming up on New Day at Arirang. South Korea reports 123,627 new COVID-19 cases as of 9 p.m. Thursday. With a clear sign of decline in infections, the government is set to remove all restrictions except for indoor mask mandates. Moscow says one of its most important warships has sunk in the Black Sea, as reports say Ukraine's Neptune anti-ship missiles was behind the sinking. Meanwhile, Ukraine's parliament on Thursday backed a resolution recognizing the actions of the Russian military in the country as genocide. U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Sung Kim will visit Seoul next week for talks that will include discussions on a joint response to North Korea's recent missile launches.
Hello and welcome to a new day at Arirang. It's Friday, April 15th, 8 a.m. here in Seoul, South Korea. I'm Oh Soo-young.
And I'm Yoon Suk-yeol. Thanks again for joining us today, because over the next hour, we'll be giving you a look at some of the top headlines of the day and experts' insights on some of the key issues here in Korea and the rest of the world. Now, of course, our top story this morning, as of Thursday, South Korea lifted its overseas travel advisory and returned to a 4-tier travel alert system.
And on top of that, authorities on Friday are expected to lift most, if not all, distancing measures. Lee Dae-yeon with our top story.
South Korea on Wednesday announced its plan to lift the special travel advisory for the first time in 2 years. It took effect starting Thursday. The Foreign Ministry made the decision based on the country's anti-virus measures and the global virus situation. This means South Korea will now revert to using the 4-tier travel alert system. Tier 1 guidelines ask travelers to be aware of COVID-19 risks at destination countries, while the highest level effectively imposes a travel ban. With the lifting of the special travel advisory, dozens of countries and territories, including Saipan and Guam, are in Tier 1, while countries like the UK, France, and Germany have been downgraded to Tier 2. But special travel advisories will remain for 26 countries, including China and Russia. With the latest lifting of measures, we can cautiously predict that there will be more people at this airport in the near future. Meanwhile, health authorities are set to reveal changes to the social distancing measures on Friday. The government appears to be leaning towards a complete lifting of restrictions on social gatherings and business hours. And pundits say they are also considering the lifting of outdoor mask mandates. Along with this, some have high hopes of a return to normalcy.
I look forward to the ease social distancing restrictions. I'm currently coming back from the US, and compared to other countries, entry policies seems complicated in South Korea.
I expect the lifting of social distancing measure to positively affect South Korea's economy.
The current measures, which restrict social gatherings to 10 people and limit business hours until midnight, will end this weekend. The new measures that are expected to come out Friday will take effect from next week. The possible lifting of the measure comes as South Korea is seeing a clear decline in COVID-19 infections. The country reported 97,748 new cases on Thursday as of 6 p.m., which is down more than 27,000 from the same time yesterday. Lee Dae-yeon, Arirang News.
While Russia had initially denied reports that one of its warships sank, the Kremlin's defense ministry has admitted stormy seas caused a flagship cruiser to go down while it was being towed to port. Kim Yo-sun has more.
Russia's defense ministry says its warship that was damaged by an explosion on Wednesday has sunk. It explained that the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, the Moskva, sank in stormy seas while being towed to a nearby port. Ukraine claimed late Thursday that it had struck the Russian warship, causing it to sink and forcing its crew to abandon the ship.
In the Black Sea region, the cruiser Moskva was hit by Neptune anti-ship missiles. The flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet sustained substantial damage. A fire started. Other ships tried to provide assistance, but due to a powerful explosion caused by ammunition and stormy conditions, the ship turned over and started sinking.
Moscow initially denied reports that the warship had sunk, claiming the fires had been extinguished. The apparent attack and sinking of the 510-crew vessel comes weeks after Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine and represents a symbolic blow to the Kremlin. Against its backdrop, the Pentagon explained Thursday that there was an explosion on the ship, but added it cannot say at this point if it was hit by a missile. Washington said that based on its assessment, the ship is able to make its own way and is heading east for repairs.
We don't have the capacity at this point to independently verify that, but certainly the way that this unfolded, it's a big blow to Russia. This is their flagship, the Moscow.
In related news, Ukraine's parliament has backed a resolution recognizing the actions of Russian forces in the country as, quote, genocide. The text, approved by a majority of 363 lawmakers, says that the actions committed by the armed forces of Russia are not just a crime of aggression, but are aimed at systematically and consistently causing the destruction of the people of Ukraine. It also called for appeals to be sent to foreign governments, parliaments, and the UN to recognize Russia's war as a genocide. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund has slashed its growth projection for the global economy this year, citing the Ukraine war and ensuing sanctions on Russia. According to IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva, economies facing downgrades include net importers of food and fuel in Asia, Africa, the Middle East and Europe. She added that for many exporters of oil, natural gas and metals, rising commodity prices will lift growth prospects but result in higher uncertainty, with gains insufficient to offset an overall global slowdown. The IMF's global economic forecast covers 143 countries.
Now, President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol completed the nominations for the cabinet after announcing his picks for the Minister of Agriculture and Labor. Now, the next step, their confirmation hearings. Yoon Jung-min explains further.
President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol has nominated former presidential official for agriculture Chung Hwang-gun as agriculture minister. Speaking on Thursday, Yoon said the nominee has 30 years of expertise in the field and has established an overall agriculture policy. Now all of the nominees for Yoon's incoming cabinet have been unveiled.
농촌이 직면한 현안 해결은 물론이고 농림축산업의 경쟁력을 강화해 미래 성장 산업으로 키워낼 적임자라고 판단했습니다.
The president-elect also tapped former Secretary General of the Korea Labor and Employment Service Lee Jung-sik as labor minister, saying he has a sound approach when it comes to issues of labor management relations.
노동 현장의 풍부한 경험과 전문성을 바탕으로 노동의 가치가 제대로 존중받고 합리적 노사관계 정립의 밑그림을 그려낼 적임자라고 판단했습니다.
In the meantime, Yoon's nominee for Justice Minister Han Dong-hoon is gearing up for his upcoming confirmation hearing. The Justice Ministry said Thursday that a team to help with the preparations has been organized at a prosecutor's office in Seoul. His confirmation is expected to face strong opposition from the ruling Democratic Party over issues related to politics and the reforms to the powers of the prosecution. Preparations for confirmation hearings are also in full swing for other nominees, many of them having finished organizing the teams that will help them get ready for the questioning they will face in the National Assembly. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The United States Special Representative for North Korea, Sung Kim, is set to visit South Korea next week as authorities in the US warn of the possibility of nuclear tests as well as missile launches. US State Department spokesperson Ned Price said on Thursday that the US is keeping a close watch on potential provocations that may take place during the 110th anniversary of the birth of Kim Il-sung, the late founding leader of North Korea. Price noted that the regime has engaged in provocations during holidays and special occasions in the past. Kim's discussions with South Korean counterpart Roh Kyu-duk will include the international response to the regime's latest missile launches. Seoul and Washington's top military officers reportedly boarded the USS Abraham Lincoln, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier currently operating in waters off the peninsula. This came ahead of a major national holiday in North Korea, which has reportedly been preparing for a large military parade. Our Peunji has the latest.
According to multiple military sources, the chairman of South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Won In-cheol, and the head of the South Korea-U.S. Combined Forces Command, Paula Camara, on Thursday, held a meeting on board the USS Abraham Lincoln. The 100,000-ton nuclear-powered aircraft carrier is currently operating in the East Sea. Although sources said it was just an ordinary meeting, it's unusual for them to meet on a nuclear-powered carrier. The USS Abraham Lincoln, which is around 330 meters long, carries about 80 fighter jets, including stealth fighter F-35C and FA-18 Hornet. The U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet had released a video and a series of images on Wednesday, showing the aircraft carrier taking part in a joint military exercise with Japan. The fact that the two officers met on the carrier on Thursday indicates that the naval drill between the two countries is now over. But the South Korean military refused to officially confirm whether the two officers boarded the U.S. aircraft carrier or any other details related to the matter. The meeting comes at a time when North Korea has been showing signs that it's preparing for a large-scale military parade, possibly scheduled for Friday, to mark the 110th birthday of its national founder, Kim Il-sung. So there's speculation that this is an attempt to send a warning to the North to prevent further provocation. Peunji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol tapped a People Power Party lawmaker to lead the Ministry of Unification. Kwon Young-se highlighted the importance of making meaningful improvements in bilateral ties. Han Sung-woo provides a glimpse of what to expect.
The nominee for South Korea's new Unification Minister has vowed to engage in meaningful diplomacy with North Korea. At the ministry's Office of Inter-Korean Dialogue in Seoul on Thursday, four-term lawmaker Kwon Young-se said he wants to create momentum for dialogue with the regime.
Although I can't do everything on my own, I'll try to at least lay the foundation for the incoming administration to create momentum toward new dialogue with the North and meaningful improvements in the bilateral relationship, groundbreaking improvements, hopefully.
There's a condition, though, denuclearization. Kwon believes normalizing inter-Korean relations without it isn't realistic.
Denuclearization goes hand in hand with normalizing relations between the two Koreas. It's not possible to mend the relationship while the North continues to develop nuclear weapons.
As such, he says it won't be easy, especially now with the North just last month having fired an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time in more than 4 years. And analysts are unsure whether sticking to a denuclearization-first approach will produce any positive results.
As nominee, Kwon Young-se is showing his will to engage in dialogue with the North. But if the standards for denuclearization are set too high, it's hard to expect any improvements between the two Koreas.
Meanwhile, standing out among Kwon's diverse political experiences is his 2-year tenure as South Korean ambassador to China from 2013 to 2015 during the Park Geun-hye administration, raising the possibility he may try to factor in China into inter-Korean dynamics moving forward.
That experience may serve an indirect role, allowing him to force certain ideas involving cooperation with China to other ministries. But it likely won't act as a bridge between China or bring about other significant changes.
The heavyweights nomination, which many say indicates President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol's resolve to make a breakthrough in inter-Korean relations, comes as a surprise, especially after previous speculation that the Yoon administration might close the Unification Ministry. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Now, Washington's Treasury Department has expanded sanctions against North Korean hacking group Lazarus, alleging that the group is tied to a more than $600 million theft of cryptocurrency. Now, the Office of Foreign Assets Control said that it's tracking a hack in March of Ronin Bridge, which connects the Axie Infinity video game with the Ethereum blockchain. The Treasury's announcement did not include the names of any individuals. Now, it did add that the latest sanctions were part of the Biden administration's persistent engagement vision for confronting the North's financially motivated hacking. And now it's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into the biggest news stories in the spotlight right now. Of course, spring is in full swing, but that also means that allergies from all the pollen in the air.
In fact, here in Korea, tree pollen from oak and birch trees, along with those from weeds like maggot and ragweed, are the main causes of seasonal allergies. Now, to find out how we can deal with what is an annual nuisance for many, including myself, we connect with Lee Hyun-jun, Vice President for the Society of Sports Korean Medicine and a Doctor of Korean Medicine. Thank you very much for joining us today, Doctor.
Hello, good morning.
And well, first of all, we use the term allergies or just seasonal allergies as a very overarching term, but specifically, what conditions or illnesses may be caused by pollen in the air?
Pollen in the air could cause some severe illnesses with your respiratory system in some people during this time of the season. Many of us are exposed to the pollen, but not all of us show allergy reaction to it. And about 10 to 20% of population are known to have allergies to the pollen. And pollen alone can cause illnesses such as allergy rhinitis, conjunctivitis, dermatitis, and asthma. Common symptoms you can experience is runny nose, stuffy nose, or itchiness in your nose or in your eyes, or even in your skin, and sore throat, and sometimes difficulty in breathing. When pollen is mixed with the microdust or yellow dust during this time of the season here in Korea, it can worsen your symptoms. So those who are allergic to the pollen should pay extra caution whenever you plan to do outside activities. So be sure to check the air quality index before you plan to go out and do outdoor activities. And sometimes wearing masks can help you from avoid the pollen from affecting your respiratory system.
Guess it's going to be pretty tough when outdoor mask mandates are lifted by next week. But kind of curious, how is seasonal allergy sort of diagnosed in Korean medicine? And also, personally for me, I seek Korean medicine when, let's say, I have back pains or so. But do Koreans seek the more traditional medicine over Western medicine when it comes to treating seasonal allergy as well?
Well, diagnosing the seasonal allergy is not quite different from the Western medicine. We take the history of patient symptoms, and we could use intranasal endoscopy to see the condition of the nasal cavity of the patient. Sometimes we can request the blood test to see the numerical value of immunoglobulin E, known as IgE, which is one of the indicators for allergy illnesses. And in the Western medicines, the patient will be normally prescribed with the antihistamine pills or steroid sprays to suppress the overreacting immune system. But these would not work well with all of the patients. So there are many patients coming to Korean medicine clinic to cure their illnesses. Many people are exposed to the pollen during this time of the year, but not all of them develop allergy symptoms, and this reaction can vary from person to person according to their underlying causes. In Korean medicine, we try to regulate and enhance the immune system of our body using various treatment tools depending on your personal body condition.
And Dr. Lee, so in what ways are seasonal allergies treated using Korean medicine? And could you also tell us about some pressure points that we can use to alleviate the pain as well? Sorry, the symptoms as well.
Okay. In Korean medicine, seasonal allergies could be treated with various treatments, such as acupuncture or pharmacopuncture, moxa or chuna manual therapy, and herbal medicine in order to elevate the symptoms. Many patients are prescribed with the herbal medicines according to their conditions, And there are also commonly used acupoints around your nose to. And these points are effective in allergy rhinitis. Today, I will introduce some of the commonly used acupuncture points to treat this allergy disease. And the first point is called indang. And indang is found on the face, and it is located at the glabella, the midpoint between the inner ends of the eyebrows. It's right here. And the second point is called yongyang. And yongyang is located in nasolabial sulcus at the same level with the midpoint of the lateral border of the ala of the nose, next to the nostril.
So it does seem... Go ahead, doctor.
Okay, so for those who have a busy life and not able to go to the hospital, maybe pressing down these acupoints or just tapping on it could help you relieve your symptoms a little bit.
All right, it does seem pretty simple there. Now, we do apologize to our viewers. We seem to be having a bit of a technical difficulty with the videos, but we did get, I guess, the good gist of where the pressure points to kind of press if you do go through this. But Dr. Lee, also diet is very important when it comes to treatment of any kind of illnesses. So is there any kind of food or drinks that you would recommend for some of our viewers who do go through on a yearly basis the seasonal allergies?
Well, seasonal fruits and vegetables have rich vitamins and antioxidants, which can help with your immune system. So try to eat plenty of seasonal fruits and vegetables would really help. And one of my favorite remedy is mixture of citrus and ginger and honey. And our circadian rhythm changes from season to season and from time to time on the daily basis. And our circadian rhythm reaches the lowest point of body temperature of about an hour or two before you get up. So whenever you get up and try a day with a hot tea of citrus, ginger, and honey is a good way to increase your body temperature and enhance your immune system. So I think it's one of a great methods to start your morning life.
Well, your remedy sounds delicious, Dr. Lee. Ginger, a bit of lemon maybe, and honey. Well, I'll definitely be trying that and also tapping away at my pressure points. Thank you very much for your insights today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now, 4 South Koreans have been killed in a road accident in Australia. Australian police said Thursday that the 4 women had only been in the country for a few weeks on a working holiday when their car collided with a truck. Now, according to authorities, they died at the scene from injuries, and the car was dragged roughly 150 meters down the highway. Investigations show the driver of the car failed to give way to the truck at an intersection on the New England Highway before the collision. Now, there are around 1,000 people currently in Korea who were born here but adopted by families overseas and who now have to return to their country of birth. And to help them adapt to life in Korea, a special class recently opened for them. Lee Si-hoo has the story.
Erin Underwood was born in South Korea but adopted by a family in the United States when she was less than a year old. A few years ago, she returned to Korea with the dream of ultimately working in the field of international cooperation. But with limited Korean language skills, she felt the need to study.
사실 다른 사람에게 의지하지 않고 한국에서 편하게 살고 싶어요. 또한 한국의 언어를 말하고 이해하는 곳이 중요하다 생각하기 때문에요.
It was then that she heard about the King Sejong Institute, an organization founded in 2012 that aims to spread the Korean language and culture across the globe. Named after the founder of the Korean alphabet Hangul, the King Sejong Institute offers programs for those interested in Korean language and culture. The institute has 234 language centers across 82 countries around the world. It has now collaborated with Korea's National Center for the Rights of the Child to open the first ever class in Korea to teach the Korean language to adoptees in the country. The classes offer training in conversational Korean as well as Korean used in business settings. Park Soo-jung from the United States says that her Korean has improved thanks to the class.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable and a little more confident speaking Korean, so I try to use it a lot more, especially with my friends.
There are about 20 students currently enrolled, but the institute is looking to enroll more students as around 1,000 overseas adoptees are currently living in Korea.
Linguistic competency is what the students need the most in order to work and live in Korea. Our plan is to equip students with the most basic competency.
The 16-week semester runs from March to July. Applications for the next semester will open in June. More information will be posted on the official website of the King Sejong Institute and the National Center for the Rights of the Child. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
It's time for Dialogue This Week. In this corner, we talk about a wide variety of issues ranging from culture and sports to the latest trends seen globally. Apparently, South Koreans have grown over 5 centimeters taller over the past 40 years, according to a report published last month. The Korean Agency for Technology and Standards Size Korea report found the average height of Korean men to be 6.4 centimeters taller than 4 decades ago, with an average height of 172.5 centimeters or 5 feet 8 inches. Meanwhile, grown Korean women had an average height of 159.6 centimeters or 6 feet 3 inches. That's around 5.3 centimeters taller than in the late 1970s. That's not the only thing that changed. Apparently, obesity grew for men while decreasing for women. We discussed the changes to the Korean body over the last few decades, and for this, joining us today is Christopher J. Bae, Chair of the Department of Anthropology at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and Dr. David Kwak, Doctor of Family Medicine at Soongcheon-yang University Hospital here in Seoul. Very warm welcome to you both. And Dr. Bae, now joining us from the beautiful sunny Hawaii. Now, the Size Korea report showed that it showed not only an increase in height, but that also some South Koreans showed a more westernized body figure, while others kept the inherent Korean figure. So first off, from an anthropological perspective, what is the standard Korean body figure?
You know, that's actually a very good question because it's very difficult to answer. The reason is that there's so much variation within a population that it's almost impossible to come up with one specific person that called. A good example of this, if you think about China and you think about Jackie Chan and you think about Yao Ming, both probably two of the most famous Chinese people, right? Jackie Chan is probably about 5'5", and Yao Ming is about over 7 feet tall. So you have a lot of variation within a single population in that sense. So it's actually a very difficult question to be able to answer. And we've done a lot of skeletal biological comparative analyses related to trying to identify what a Korean looks like. And for example, I've had students look at comparing between Korean skeletons and Japanese skeletons, modern skeletons, to see if they can identify distinct characteristics or traits on the skeleton that would say this is a typical Korean and this is a typical Japanese. It is very, very difficult to be able to answer that question.
Well, that is a very stark contrast indeed, Jackie Chan and Yao Ming. But, well, in this report, for instance, can we say that there have been evolutionary changes in the body figure, particularly when it comes to the Korean body?
Yes, certainly. If you look at the data from 4 decades ago, in general, Koreans were much smaller. And if you think about the impact of the war, World War II and then the Korean War, socioeconomic-wise, it was very poor, right? You think about Koreans today, though, socioeconomics, it's off the charts compared to 40 or 60 years ago. So basically, if you think about that in terms of nutrition and health, Koreans are doing much better now than 2 or 3 generations ago. So it's not that surprising that you have an increase in body size, not only height, but also in width as well, as a result of these changes in diet and health. And the other point that you brought up about some Koreans having more of a Western body structure, when I first visited Korea in the 1990s, there were hardly any restaurants other than Korean restaurants and Korean foods available. But, you could go get Japanese food or Chinese food, but Western restaurants were not that common at that time. But, nowadays, if you go to Korea, Western food is readily available on almost every street corner. There are so many different restaurants and food that's available to a lot of people. You link that with travel. There's so much more international travel nowadays than, say, the 1980s. Are getting a lot of different experiences as a result of this. And so it's not that surprising that Koreans are becoming bigger, not only taller, but also wider and more in terms of their Western structure. So.
Now, Dr. Kwak, bringing you into the conversation. Well, we commonly tend to think that a person's height is in their genetic makeup, their DNA. So tall people tend to have tall children. But it seems that there are other factors that influence height, such as nutrition, health, environment. So how much of a person's height is really determined by their DNA?
Well, I think at this state, it's most commonly accepted that the DNA composes up to about 80% of the determination for the height. But I personally believe that it's actually 100% instead of the 80%, because it's the DNA's predetermination for the height is actually what maximizes, in the maximal level, what determines the height of a person. And nutrition and other types of environments that are actually factors that takes toll on the maximum capacity of the height that can possibly happen in a person. So what I'm trying to say is that the DNA, when the DNA predetermines a person to be at a certain height, but let's say that he or she actually has to go through a very devastating environment that sort of lacks in nutrition, or puts him or her in a position where they have to go through a very anomaly situations, then they would take a certain amount of height reduction from the maximum level. So commonly speaking, I think it's about up to 80% that the DNA predetermines the height, but medically speaking, it's what actually predetermines completely of a person's height.
And Dr. Kwak, do we stop growing at a certain age? And also, at what point do environmental factors So until what point do environmental factors determine our height?
Well, up to a certain point, I think medically speaking, we believe a person grows in height actually up to about 23 to 25 years of age, possibly. But we have different phases of the speed of growth in different ages as well. And that also happens differently for females and males. I believe it happens. So there's a certain phase called growth spurt, which is the phase where a person grows mostly during the phase, meaning a person who's supposed to grow, let's say, a centimeter or two within a year, during the time of growth spurt would actually turn to grow, let's say, 14 centimeters instead of the 2. And that happens usually around the time of puberty, at around the ages of 12 to 14 for females and 14 to 16 for males. So it is important that a person keeps at his or her best nutrition and best environment during that time. But obviously, it'll also matter for them to keep in a good balance of diet and whatnot during other ages as well.
Now, Professor Pae, in the last century, South Korea went through times of difficulty of the Korean War, as well as, well, more positive developments like economic development and modernization. And, well, how have these historical factors really influenced the height of South Koreans?
They've influenced them enormously. If you think about the fact that your children are probably bigger than you, you are probably bigger than your grandparents, and if your grandparents were born during World War II, grew up during the Japanese occupation period, life was very, very difficult for these people. There's actually two famous examples out there. One of the famous examples is called the Dutch famine. During the end of World War II, there were several Netherlands isolated resources into them at the end of World War II, and so they ended up going through a famine stage. So children that were born during this period, because they weren't, the mother was not able to get the proper nutrients into the womb, into the fetus, ended up being a lot smaller as a result. But what's interesting about the results of the Dutch famine is that apparently it also carried over into the next generation as well, and it appeared, where they still weren't able to overcome these problems. More closer to home, another famous example, though, are North Korean refugees, or people that are coming over with young children from North Korea. People have done metric analysis studies of the skeletons of these North Korean children, and compared to children of the same age in South Korea, the children in South Korea that are the same age are usually almost always much bigger than the children from North Korea. And most human biologists chalk this up directly to lack of nutrition. And so that, hopefully within 1 or 2 generations, the North Koreans that are being raised now in South Korea will be able to get closer to the mean of South Korea in terms of overall body structure.
And Professor Pae, South Korea only has about 40 years worth of statistical data on height. But based on your extensive research and understanding the human evolutionary record in East Asia, what are the physical changes we're seeing now expected? That's to you, Dr. Pae.
I think we should probably expect to see a slight increase in overall body size still. If there's still an influx of, say, Western foods into regular Korean society, we're going to see an increase in body weight, and it's probably not going to be very good. Probably Dr. Kwok can speak on this as well, but if you look at Western foods, especially cheaper Western foods that entered the Pacific, I live in the middle of the Pacific, I'm quite aware of this, so if you think about it from that perspective, all types of, there were many different types of health issues that arose with Pacific Islanders once they started to rely on these fast foods, these Western fast foods. Obesity, diabetes come to become major problems with these populations.
And Professor Kwok, now, how important is diet for children, teenagers in promoting growth? And also, how important are other factors like getting enough sleep and regular exercise?
I would actually weigh in on the importance of sleeping over the importance of having a balanced diet. As I said before, the predeterminants, I think, is currently widely accepted to be the DNA, but these nutritional factors and other environmental factors are what actually takes away the height from its maximum capacity. So in that regards, physiologically speaking, while we are sleeping is when the growth hormone is excreted within our body, and that's what makes all the metabolism to grow, make the growth in height. So sleeping is very important, but more importantly, sleeping at right hours is also very important. Currently known, the growth hormone are excreted from around 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. And that depends on the circadian rhythm for each different person. So it is very important that growing children, especially in their puberties, that they get enough sleep during those hours. And on top of that, the perfect balance in the diet is also what matters, because those are the resources that will help the metabolism, or through the metabolism that will actually end up constituting the growth and height. What I mean by the balance in diet is really the perfect balance between vegetables, carbohydrates, proteins, and especially those dairy products containing calcium. So we're currently recommending all children to actually consume not just particularly very eccentric in their diet, because I believe some of the parents, especially in the westernized lifestyles, worry about the figures of their children, that they shouldn't. It's more important that they keep in a complete, well-balanced diet. But as I've said before, I think it's more important that they also get good enough sleep at the right hours.
Well, I wouldn't mind being a few inches taller, but I guess I've lost the timing. But this is where you must end the interview today. That was Christopher J. Pitt, Chair of the Department of Anthropology at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and David Kwak, Doctor of Family Medicine at Suncheonyoung University Hospital in Seoul. Thank you again so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Bora Chung is shortlisted for the 2022 International Booker Prize, which rewards the finest in fiction translated into English. Now, before the final results comes out on May 26, the South Korean novelist held a press conference. Well, Kim Bo-kyung takes us there.
The finest fiction book in the world. That prestigious title and a $65,000 prize is what the winner of the renowned International Booker Prize will get. From 13 books that made it into the long list, 6 titles have now become the finalists. Among 6 finalists is Bora Chung's Cursed Bunny, a collection of 10 short horror stories. The Booker Prize said it uses fantasy and surrealism to address the very real horrors and cruelties of patriarchy and capitalism in modern society. Why did Chung choose a rabbit of all animals to make into a horror story? Well, she had to pick one from the 12 zodiac signs in 2015 when writing a special series of stories with other authors, each picking different animals. All the other strong and more familiar animals were already taken by other authors, and she was left with either a sheep or a rabbit.
I knew nothing about sheep, so I decided to pick the rabbit. Bunnies are the weakest among the animals without having any weapon-like features on their bodies. They're soft, pretty, and cute, so I wanted to make it more horrifying.
Anton Ha, a Swedish-Korean translator, skillfully captured Chung's prose and allowed readers around the globe to get to know her style. He said that Chung's imagination is one of the best, but also that her prose is something to behold, in that it fuses horror and humor together.
After just reading a sentence, I thought the literacy was remarkable. Its prose was outstanding. When Chung was among the jury at a science fiction literature contest, she once talked about how lots of books only focused on the science part, not the fiction. She herself pays more attention to prose and with originality. I thought it would sell well right away.
Ha also said that he is surprised the book has only recently begun to receive the attention it deserves. Regarding her own original prose and imagination, Chung says she was influenced by the free and fantastical features of Slavic literature.
Among Slavic literature, I studied many Soviet novels that were from the 1920s and 30s, from a time right after the revolution when all artistic experiments were encouraged and supported. The arts were free, and I loved such artistic attempts, silly imagination, and creativity.
Both translator and author agree that although South Korea boasts its own literary value in a variety of genres, they have not been recognized accordingly. Apart from winning the prize, they hope Cursed Bunny's global recognition can steer attention toward other South Korean literature genres. 김보경, 아리랑 뉴스.
For a look at news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley standing by at the Arirang newsroom. Very good morning to you, Matthew.
Good morning to you guys.
Good morning to you, Matthew, as well. We're going to start things off with some updates in a country that you have very close ties with, South Africa, and their recent floodings as the death toll there continues to rise, unfortunately.
Right, and according to newly released figures, the number of victims has risen to 341 following unprecedented flooding in the country's eastern coastal province of KwaZulu-Natal. With roads and bridges washed away by floods and mudslides, rescuers have turned to helicopters in search of survivors. Meanwhile, head of the province, Sihle Sikalala, said that 40,723 residents have been affected, although there was no indication on the number of missing people. The floods come as the region has been battered with torrential downpours over the past week. It is the heaviest rainfall in 60 years, with climate scientists pointing to global warming as a contributing factor. The South African Weather Service has forecast continued rainfall until Monday. An Israeli high-powered laser defense system has passed a drone interception and multiple aerial threat test for the first time. The accelerated rollout of the technology is part of the country's plan to reduce the high cost of its current anti-projectile defenses. According to Israeli officials, the technology uses lasers to superheat incoming projectiles or drones and will be added to the country's existing air defenses. The laser will see initial deployment in Israel's southern region, where towns face continued shelling by Hamas and other militant groups in Gaza. A member of the so-called Islamic State Beatles, who beheaded American hostages in Iraq and Syria, has been found guilty of terrorism charges by a U.S. court. El-Shafi El-Sheikh was part of a four-person group nicknamed the Beatles for their British accents, who took hostages in order to demand the release of ISIS militants in prison or to collect ransom. Some hostages were released following a ransom payment, but others were executed in propaganda videos. A Virginia court on Thursday found the former ISIS member guilty on charges of lethal hostage-taking and conspiracy to commit murder. The charges carry a potential death sentence, but prosecutors have told British officials that they will not seek the death penalty. Of the other members of the ISIS cell, one pleaded guilty in the U.S. last September, another was killed in a drone strike in 2015, and the fourth is in prison in Turkey. For the first time since the start of the pandemic, Pope Francis visited an Italian prison for a Holy Thursday Mass. The Pope washed and kissed the feet of 12 inmates of different ages and nationalities as a gesture to remember the humility of Jesus towards his followers before his death. Speaking to prisoners, the Pope said that priests should be the first to serve and not exploit others. While his predecessors held this service in notable cathedrals, Pope Francis instead continued his own tradition of visiting prisons and old-age homes. Since the start of the pandemic, smaller versions of the service had been held at the Vatican due to COVID-19 restrictions. Pope Francis is set to deliver an Easter Vigil Mass on Saturday evening in St. Peter's Basilica.
Good morning. A cloudy and windy Thursday has turned into calm and sunny start to Friday. Temperatures will return to norms today, so please dress accordingly for the weather conditions. Skies will be sunny for much of the day with high UV rays across the country, so have your sun gear ready, but it should be a very pleasant afternoon with good air quality nationwide. But there could be some passing spotty rain in the late afternoon in the upper regions, possibly snowy in mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province. It's a bright, refreshing start for most parts except on Jeju Island, but skies will turn blue as the morning goes on there. Morning lows are a few notches lower than yesterday in many areas. But highs will be 2 to 6 degrees higher than yesterday, reaching in the upper teens to 20s. Seoul will be going up to 18 degrees. Gyeongju will be topping out at 16 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Easter weekend weather looks to be promising. Just beware of wide temperature gaps between lows and highs. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
And that's going to wrap up our newscast this morning, but we will be back again next week for our Monday edition of New Day at Arirang.
Thanks very much for tuning in. And until next time, have a lovely weekend wherever you are. Goodbye.
Everyone knows I'm passionate. Know why? Look at how passionate Koreans are. And you know I'm fast. Don't blink. Korean move fast too. I'm creative on the pitch. People say I'm smart. Just look how smart Korea is. I aim to be spectacular for the fans. Why am I so fun?